This is a continuation of the Legend Symbology, Labeling, and Layouts lecture for Intro to GIS. This portion will focus on the labeling part. So we're going to look at both how to do automatic labeling and also do manual labeling. We'll start with the most basic. The first thing that we need to identify, whether we're doing either for that matter, is to recognize what word it is that is going to be used as the label. So for example, if we start with our US cities here, we move into our properties box. We've used our general tab so far, our symbology tab. Now we're going to move over to the labels tab. This is where we determine which field is going to be used as the label. So within the label field, you can pull down and it will provide you with every field that the database has in store. For example, if you, instead of labeling the cities with their name, maybe you want to label them based on their population or some other characteristic that's listed here. We'll go ahead and stick with name just because that makes the most sense for cities, but just to know, you have to determine this before you begin. You can change the font here if you want, the size, the color, all these identifiers that you're probably fairly familiar with. So we'll stick with a name at this size for the moment and move on from there. The first way that we will try to do a label is just by a standard, straightforward label everything. This is a simple process of right-clicking on whichever feature class you would wish to label and label features. It's just a simple click. It will automatically label everything in whatever format you have selected for it. Now these labels are static. They cannot be moved, they cannot be altered unless you go in and alter all of them, which is possible to do by going back into your properties, just as we just came from, into your labels and switching. Maybe you want to make it a different style, or you want to change the color or the size or whatever it is. You can do that, but they will all be the same and you cannot change them. You cannot move them individually. So the next item that we'll try is to do some manual labeling. These cities are pretty big at the moment. I could go back in, or I could just undraw cities. They're still there. I can pull them back whenever I choose. But remember, if you uncheck them in the table of contents, they disappear from your map. Now we'll work on how to manually label an individual record within your database. To do this, you need to have the tool available. In my case, the tool is already listed here, and I believe that it is presented by default. But if not, you can go into your Customize toolbars, down to the Customize option at the bottom. We've done this in a previous lecture. Select Commands, then the categories will be listed. Then I believe this particular one is listed in the label option. Yes, here it is. And then again, you would just click and drag it over to your GUI. Once you have it in a space where it's available, you just change the function of your cursor to it. Then you can move into whatever area it is that you're interested in labeling and present it. Now, a difference between this type of manual label and an automatic label is that these are much more movable. So I can change the function of my cursor back to the select tool, or to the pointer if you will. Click on the item itself and I can move the label around. I can make it larger by right-clicking on it. I think you can double-click as well. Move into the properties, change the symbol, and we go back to a dialog box in which we can make changes. So I can enlarge it if I wish. I can change the color if I wish. Same ideas that we can do in other cases. And then it would apply just to that individual label. This turns out to be handy if you have an area that is congested. If you have a lot of labels that are right next to one another, you can move them individually so that they can all be shown. There's also a way to program the system to do that for you through a process called annotation, which we have not learned in this class, but if you go to the manual that's provided for you in this class, it's one of the options that's detailed there. There are lots of things that can be tinkered with both symbology and labeling. I'm just providing you with the basics here just so that we can identify how to create our maps and to make some changes to them. So that concludes this portion of the lecture.